The Cam Newton interview did more damage than the MZ Shineeko one, and it is not even close. And if you are just now walking into this conversation, you are already late because the receipts are on the table, the timelines are on the screen. And Claressa Shields is currently mid-explanation of a story that has already been dismantled by her own words on her own YouTube channel dated by her own hand. I need you to understand something before we go one sentence further. The narrative you have been sold, that there was no happy home to break up narrative, the I didn't even know he was a rapper narrative, the we didn't go public because we were just being private narrative, is not a version of the truth that got squeezed for time. It is a completely engineered story sitting on top of a documented paper trail that contradicts every single load-bearing beam holding it up. And the wildest part, the part that makes this a story about more than just a boxer, a rapper, and a rap wife, is that the person telling this story keeps giving us the exact dates we need to prove she is not telling it straight. She said 2021, 2022. She said July 6, 2024. She said August. She said 6 months. She said she didn't know him. She said she was a fan. She said she wasn't public. She said she was private. She said Remy did it first. She said her fiancé Tony Rich was a thing of the past. And every single one of those sentences is on a collision course with another sentence she said in a different room to a different host. What looks like a woman defending her love story is actually a woman handing us a map to the crime scene and then pointing at herself in every photograph. When we get to the engagement ring picture from the Shakur-Stevenson fight, and I promise you we are getting there, because that one picture ends this entire debate, you are going to understand why this is not about Remy Ma at all. It is about a 2-time Olympic gold medalist who thought she could outrun receipts on the same internet she brags on. So sit down, buckle in, because the Cam Newton sit-down did not clear her name. It signed the confession. Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, and subscribe. Let's get into it. Now let me set the table for anybody just tuning in, because this story is a lot bigger than a rap wife and a boxer getting into it on social media, and if you do not have the full context, the receipts I am about to show you will not hit the way they need to hit. Claressa Shields is a 2-time Olympic gold medalist, an undisputed champion in multiple weight classes, the self-proclaimed GWAT greatest woman of all time, a woman with a movie about her life, endorsement deals, and a public image she has spent over a decade building brick by brick with actual sweat and actual titles. Papoose is a veteran New York rapper, longtime husband of Remy Ma, one half of what the culture literally branded as Black Love, the couple that headlined Love and Hip Hop, the couple that had a daughter together, the couple that had a matching tattoo situation, the couple that until about 8 months ago was showing up to red carpet events smiling like nothing was wrong in the world. And Remy Ma is Remy Ma, Bronx legend, one of the most respected female rappers of her generation, married to Papoose since 2008. That is the triangle. That is the setup. In December of 2024, Remy Ma went nuclear on social media, leaked text messages, leaked what she said were Papoose's clothes packed up in bags, and publicly outed her husband for what she said was a relationship with Claressa Shields. That was the moment the private became the public, and that was the moment Claressa Shields stopped being just a boxer and started being the third name in a love and hip-hop divorce. Since then, Claressa has done Tamron Hall, she has done Angela Yee's Way Up, she has done a live stream war with radio host MZ Shineeko, and now the biggest one yet, sitting across from Cam Newton on Funky Friday, trying to walk everybody through her timeline and explain why she is not the villain in a story where she is objectively the third person who is not supposed to be there. And the stakes here are not small. Personally, she is watching her endorsement leverage soften while she is supposed to be promoting the biggest movie of her life. Culturally, she is taking body blows from Black women online who feel like she disrespected one of theirs. And industry-wise, she is learning in real time that when you insert yourself into a love and hip-hop marriage, the receipts do not evaporate just because you got the guy. So the question sitting in front of us tonight is simple. If the story is as clean as Claressa Shields keeps saying it is, why does every single date she offers get contradicted by another date she offered somewhere else? Let's go to the tape. Layer 1, the surface stuff, the stuff anybody with a search bar and 10 free minutes can pull up. Claressa told Cam Newton, and she has told other outlets, that Papoose knocked out a man she referred to as Easy the Block Captain in what she dated as 2021-2022, allegedly because Remy Ma had stepped outside the marriage with that man. And therefore, in her framing, there was no happy home to break up by the time she entered the picture in July of 2024. That is the story. There is one small problem, and by small I mean it is the size of a T-Mobile arena. On July 29, 2023, a date any boxing fan can verify because it is one of the most important fights of the modern era, Errol Spence Jr. versus Terence Crawford, Papoose was ringside in Las Vegas with his wife Remy Ma. He posted about it. He tagged her. He said, and I am quoting the public post, that he hadn't had this much fun in a long time, predicted Crawford would stop Spence in the 9th, and posted photos of himself hugged up on Remy Ma with Chris Brown in the background. That is 2023. That is after the 2021 to 2022 knockout Claressa is describing. That is the no happy home. She says she did not break up, sitting ringside in Vegas, arm around his wife, Black Love hashtag intact. That is receipt number 1, and it does not require anybody to be an insider. It requires you to know how to read a caption. Receipt number 2, March 31st, 2023, The Drew Barrymore Show. Mary J., Blige, Papoose, Remy Ma, and their daughter, all featured in a public appearance. Papoose posted himself, captioned, had an amazing time watching my beautiful wife and daughter join the Queen Mary J., Blige, with a hashtag that literally reads Black Love. Again, that is after the alleged 2021 to 2022 knockout that supposedly ended the marriage. Receipt number 3, Papoose's own social media, which he has not deleted, has not archived, has not scrubbed, still shows red carpet appearances with Remy Ma throughout 2023 and into 2024. The public record does not show a man in a broken home. The public record shows a marriage that was, at absolute worst, working through something privately while continuing to present as intact. Receipt number 4 is the one that folds the whole story in half. In an interview with Angela Yee on Way Up, Claressa said out of her own mouth that Papoose had posted a video of her celebrating her win over Savannah Marshall, and that this was proof he had been a fan of hers long before they met. That fight, Claressa versus Savannah Marshall, happened October 15, 2022, at the O2 Arena in London. Which means Claressa is on the record confirming that Papoose was in her orbit, mentioning her on his social media as far back as October 2022, which is smack dead in the middle of the 2021-2022 window she just described to Cam Newton as the moment the marriage was allegedly falling apart. So on one hand, she is telling us the marriage was already over. On the other hand, she is telling us the man in the marriage was posting about her the whole time. Pick a lane, champ. Because right now you're driving in both of them, and the receipts are the road. And oh, do I have more for you. If you thought the boxing footage from Vegas and the Drew Barrymore Show cameo were the heaviest pieces of this puzzle, you have not seen anything yet. Because the next layer is the one that Claressa's own defenders cannot explain away without pretending the calendar does not exist. The stands are really not going to like this next one, because we're about to walk out of the surface level. He was still with his wife, evidence, and straight into the you had a whole entire fiancé of your own evidence. And I want everybody watching to remember the name Tony Rich, because the next 15 minutes of this video are about to make that name unforgettable. Now let's get into the cultural layer, because this is where the story stops being about Papoose and Remy Ma and starts being about Claressa Shields' own house. Claressa Shields had a fiancé. Not a boyfriend, not a situationship, not a we were talking. A fiancé. His name is Tony Rich. He is a personal trainer out of Michigan, and he had been in her life on and off for years. There is footage on Claressa's own YouTube channel, her channel, not a blog, not a hater page, her channel, of a video uploaded May 17, 2024, titled with the phrase, with fiancé Tony Rich hitting the pads. That is her hand posting that title. That is her calling him her fiancé in mid-May of 2024, less than 2 months before the date she keeps giving us for when she supposedly met Papoose for the very first time at the Shakur Stevenson fight on July 6, 2024. And it does not stop at the title. Tony Rich's own social media throughout 2024 is a public timeline of a man who thought he was in a committed engagement. In February of 2024, they are wine tasting. She is wearing the ring. He is calling her his fiancé. In April of 2024, they're at the Ryan Garcia versus Devin Haney fight at the Barclays Center in Brooklyn, together, engaged. In May of 2024, they're in the same room as Terence Crawford, engagement ring still on her hand, Tony Rich still by her side. In June of 2024, Tony Rich is publicly promoting her upcoming fight, arranging a bus from Detroit to Flint, selling seats, hashtagging her name. On July 22nd, 2024, 16 days after she says she met Papoose for the very first time and had absolutely no idea who he was, Tony Rich is still publicly advertising her fight, still calling her his fiancé, still deep in the plans. Then after her July 27th win over Vanessa LePage Jonas, Tony Rich posts, with heart eyes, "What a wonderful feeling, congratulations, bae." And on August 21st, 2024, weeks after though we started dating in August, line Claressa herself gave, Tony Rich is publicly posting, "I love you, Claressa Shields." That is 4 separate pieces of cultural evidence, all sitting on public timelines, all documented. All from the exact months where Claressa is currently telling Cam Newton she was in an exclusive private courtship with Papoose that lasted 6 months before Remy exposed it in December of 2024. Now some of you are going to say, well, maybe Tony Rich was in denial, maybe he was posting to save face, maybe he did not know. And that is a fair pushback, and I want to address it head-on, because I am not in the business of pretending counter-arguments do not exist. Here is why that pushback does not survive contact with the timeline. Tony Rich was not just posting to save face. He was inside the operation. He was training her. He was at Fight Week. He was promoting the fights. He had access to floor seats. He was literally raffling them off on Cash App in July of 2024, which means the woman who is currently telling us she was privately committed to Papoose was giving her actual fiancé the tickets she was allegedly giving to Papoose. And it gets worse. In one of the most infamous photos from the Shakur-Stevenson fight on July 6, 2024, the photo Papoose and Claressa keep pointing to as the origin story, the anniversary, the we met and it was love moment. Claressa Shields is standing next to Papoose wearing the engagement ring Tony Rich gave her. That is not a rumor. That is the picture. And in a subsequent interview, Claressa herself said, without prompting, that she and Papoose haven't missed a day of talking to each other since we met July 6, 2024. Which means, by her own admission, she was wearing another man's engagement ring in a photograph with the man she has been talking to every single day since that photograph was taken. This is not me connecting dots. This is her handing me the dots pre-connected. And this is what I mean when I say the cultural evidence is what really turns the story. Because this is not about who is married. This is about the character of a person who is willing to stand in a red carpet photograph, wearing one man's ring, next to another man she was already emotionally involved with, and then look into a camera less than a year later and tell us she did nothing wrong. Alright, gear shift. We have to shift gears now, because up until this point we have been talking about relationships, receipts, and rap wife drama, and that is the version of this story most of the internet is stuck on. But if that is all you are watching the shallow end. The real story, the industry story, the reason this is not going away for Claressa Shields no matter how many podcasts she does, is a much bigger story about how celebrity narratives get manufactured, protected, and eventually collapse. And about how a person can build a decade-long brand as a disciplined champion and then torch a significant portion of that brand equity in under 12 months by mismanaging a single public relationship. Let me walk you through the 3 systemic layers of what is actually happening here, because none of what you are watching is random. First layer, the endorsement and biopic economy. Claressa Shields is not just a boxer anymore. She is a brand with a Hollywood film, The Fire Inside, built around her life story, distributed by Amazon MGM, positioned to be her crossover moment into non-boxing audiences. That kind of positioning requires a very specific public image, the disciplined champion, the underdog from Flint, the woman who overcame. That image does not have room in it for second woman in a love and hip-hop divorce while your own fiancé finds out from the internet. Every single interview she is doing right now, Tamron Hall, Angela Yee, Cam Newton, is a damage control tour, not a promotional tour, and if you have been in these rooms you can tell the difference. The questions have shifted from her career to her personal life. The reactions to her online have shifted from championship celebration to relationship interrogation. That is a measurable shift in her brand's center of gravity, and in the endorsement economy, that shift has consequences that do not show up for 6 to 18 months, but always show up. Second layer, the love and hip-hop ecosystem. Papoose and Remy were not just a couple. They were a franchise. Their marriage was content. Their daughter Reminisce was content. Their black love branding was content. When Remy went public in December 2024 with the leaked text messages and the packed clothes, she was not just exposing a cheating spouse. She was protecting a franchise she has spent 15 years building, a franchise where she is the star, the visible partner, the one with the fan base. The one whose brand is tied to Bronx loyalty and being the wife who stood by her man through his prison sentence and his career. Claressa Shields walked into a situation where she was up against not just Remy Ma the person, but Remy Ma the brand infrastructure, the media relationships, the 10 million followers, the loyalty of a fan base that had watched this couple for over a decade. And she walked into it with the arrogance of somebody who has never done media analysis in her life. That is not a fair fight. That was never going to be a fair fight. Third layer, the manufactured narrative economy. And this is the deepest part. What Claressa is attempting to do right now, across all of these interviews, is a very specific media maneuver. She is attempting to retroactively restructure a timeline. She is attempting to move the start date of her relationship with Papoose backward and forward at the same time, depending on which audience she is talking to. To one audience, she says August 2024, because that puts her safely after the July 6th meeting. To another audience, she says 6 months of nightly phone calls before December, which pushes the real start back to June 2024. Before the meeting, she keeps citing as the origin. That is not a woman remembering imperfectly. That is a woman trying to build two different timelines in two different rooms, because the true timeline is not defensible in either room. And this is what a lot of you are missing about how celebrity image repair actually works. You do not have to lie about one big thing. You have to keep every small thing consistent across every platform you appear on. And Claressa Shields, because she is fundamentally a fighter and not a media strategist, keeps giving different rooms different dates because she is answering emotionally instead of strategically. That is why her fan base is fracturing in real time. That is why SHIELDSâ's simple question, "How long are you prepared to be with somebody else's husband?" hit her so hard she went into live stream mode calling the woman out of her name. That is why the Cam Newton interview did more damage than the SHIELDSâ one, because Cam gave her enough rope to build the two contradictory timelines back-to-back in the same conversation, and now they are on the same video, one after the other. On the same platform. That is not a media hit job. That is a self-inflicted wound in high definition. Which brings us to the truth bomb, the actual claim at the center of this entire video, the thing you cannot unsee once you see it. The relationship between Claressa Shields and Papoose did not start on July 6, 2024, at the Shakur Stevenson fight. That is the origin story they are selling in every interview. That is what Papoose posted with the Tony anniversary caption. That is what Claressa keeps repeating like a script. July 6, 2024, Newark, New Jersey. First time she met him, did not know him, did not even know he was a rapper. But her own words on Cam Newton's show blew up her own story. She told Cam Newton that her non-negotiable in the relationship was that they talked on the phone every single night, and that they did that for 6 months before Remy Ma exposed them in December of 2024. Do the math with me. December 2024 minus 6 months of nightly phone calls equals June of 2024, which is before the July 6, 2024 first time we met date. And separately, on a different podcast, she said they started dating in August, around that time. 3 different start dates from the same woman in the same news cycle. That is not a memory problem. That is a story problem. And when you layer that on top of the fact that she confirmed on Angela Yee's show that Papoose had been posting about her since her October 2022 win over Savannah Marshall, which she framed as him being a fan, but which she also framed as evidence that they had a connection before the Shakur Stevenson fight, the picture that emerges is not the picture she is selling. The picture that emerges is a relationship, or at minimum a communication, that predates the July 6th meeting she keeps pointing to as the anniversary, and that overlapped with her active, public, ring-wearing engagement to Tony Rich. That is what the receipts show. That is what her own quotes, in her own voice, on her own platforms, spell out. And the consequences of that reality are not small. Because if the timeline is what the receipts say it is, then the narrative she has been building, there was no happy home to break up, I was a single woman, I met him at a fight, we fell in love organically is not a version of events that survives a Google search. And the woman who spent 10 years selling herself as the disciplined, undeniable, receipts in hand 2-time Olympic gold medalist is now the woman whose own receipts are the things sinking her story. That is not something a Cam Newton interview can walk back. That is not something an Angela Yee sit-down can smooth over. That is a story that has already been told by the paper trail, and every additional interview only adds more paper to the trail. Allegedly, according to what Remy Ma released to the public in December of 2024, The text messages between Claressa and Remy in the months leading up to the exposure suggest a woman who was in Remy's inbox one summer and in Remy's husband's DMs by the next, and while I am not going to state that as confirmed criminal conduct, because it is not, I am going to state as a matter of documented public record that the friendship Claressa has publicly acknowledged with Remy in that same window makes. The entire "I did not know he was married, I did not know it was a whole situation" defense collapsed under its own weight. You cannot be friends enough with the wife to text her about being in Vegas together in July of 2023 and then claim in 2024 that you did not know the husband existed as a person, let alone as a rapper. And here is where I want to end this section, because I want everybody who has made it this far to sit with what I am about to say, because if you have watched me for any real length of time, you know I am not the guy who exaggerates for engagement. The reason this story matters, the reason it is not just gossip, is because what we are watching in real time is a person with real accomplishments. Accomplishments that took years and blood and sacrifice, and a level of discipline most people watching this video will never possess, throwing that accomplishment into a wood chipper to defend a version of events that does not hold up to a screenshot. Claressa Shields is a two-time Olympic gold medalist. That is real. That is untouchable. Nobody can take that from her. But what she can do, and what she is doing, is diminish the standing of that accomplishment by attaching it to a public relationship she cannot cleanly explain. Meanwhile, look at where Remy Ma is right now. Remy Ma did one Instagram post in December of 2024, said her piece, released her receipts, and then largely stepped back and let the internet do the excavation on her behalf. She did not need to go on Cam Newton. She did not need to go on Angela Yee. She did not need to fight radio hosts on Instagram Live. She let the paper trail talk for her, and it has been talking for her every single day since. That is what dignity in a public dispute looks like. That is what somebody who knows the receipts are on her side looks like. One woman is on a media tour trying to rewrite dates. The other woman posted once and went back to her life. One woman is body-shaming radio hosts on live streams. The other woman is still, as of every public report, the legal wife whose divorce filing has not been finalized. And when you strip away all the noise, all the interviews, all the nicknames, all the drama, that is the contrast this story keeps coming back to. The person with the cleaner receipts is winning without even having to be outside. The person trying to explain her way out is losing more ground with every explanation. That is not spin. That is just what the timeline says. And the timeline, in the end, is undefeated. This is only the start, and I want to be extremely specific about what comes next, because I've been doing this long enough to know when a story is about to have a second act and when it is about to have a third and a fourth. The first thing to watch is the actual legal filing. Papoose has said publicly, and Claressa has repeated on Cam Newton's platform, that he filed for divorce. But as of every credible public report, that divorce has not been finalized. The moment those filings become public and searchable, we are going to know the actual date of initiation, and that date is going to be measured against everything Claressa has said, and if that date does not line up with the story she has told, this becomes a completely different conversation. The second thing to watch is Tony Rich. Because Tony Rich has been remarkably quiet given what he has watched happen. There is a quote circulating attributed to him, "I don't even hate Claressa Shields after she played me for this head," and if that man ever decides to sit down in the interview chair, the timeline gets a third narrator. And third narrators historically do not help defendants. And the third thing to watch is Remy Ma's next move, because a woman who dropped the receipts in December of 2024 and then went silent for 8 months is a woman with more receipts in the folder, and the question is not whether she opens the folder again, but when. So subscribe now, hit the notification bell, because when any one of those 3 shoes drops, we are going to be on it the same day, breaking it down the same way, giving you the timeline the same way. And if you enjoyed this breakdown, if you learned something, if you laughed at any of it, do me the favor of sharing it, because this is exactly the kind of receipt work the algorithm tries to bury and the culture actually needs. Coming up next on this channel, the one interview Claressa Shields has not done yet, the one host she has been ducking, and the specific question about a certain Las Vegas weekend in July of 2023 that she does not want asked on camera. And why the answer to that question may be the thing that ends this entire arc for good. Click that next video. You do not want to miss it. We unpack. We unpack. Coming to you live.